Welcome to another lap guide for the iRacing Camel GT series. This week we are at Sonoma Raceway. Here's the lap first. All right, so lap time there is a 117.257. We have morning weather again this season, just as we did last season. And get this set real quickly here. Okay. And back to the lap. So just as we had last season, same weather, I started with the same setup as last season, which was an 8-wing setup, and did some testing with 9-wing and then 10-wing, and just found more speed as I did so. Now, just to verify that wasn't a result of just practice, I went back to 9 and 8-wing and confirmed that I just couldn't run quite as quick a lap. So I really like 10-wing again here quite a bit, just as we had with Mid-Ohio, where I was able to get off the corners a little quicker, on the throttle a little quicker, and of course that resulted in more time, even in the sectors of the track where there's a lot more straight line speed. You can actually carry more speed onto those straights from the beginning. And so I'll talk about a couple of those key points as we go through the lap here. So this was pretty clean lap. There's one little mistake, which I'll point out. I don't think it cost too much, but I'll show you that as I took a little too much curbing here on one of these corners. And before we go into the lap, I also want to mention that Sonoma is actually a very fun track to learn. It's one of my favorite tracks, but it's also pretty challenging. It's kind of like a roller coaster ride, at least with all of the elevation changes, and as one corner leads into the next, getting each corner correct is really critical to set up the following corner. And once you get that flow, the track really has an amazing flow to it. But because it's a challenging track, I think it's also very rewarding to get right. So let's go ahead and get into this turn by turn. So approaching turn 1, kind of from the middle of the track here, and then starting to ease off the throttle here at turn in, just to avoid carrying too much speed. The target at this point is to get the car left, and you'll see even just a bit of trail braking now, or just kind of dragging the brakes a bit here to get the car left, and aiming to use the curbing here on the left, and getting set up so that you've got as much room as you can to get around the turn 2. So just kind of watching that now from throttle view, or from the cockpit view. So really trying to get the car pointed along this left-hand side, along the curbing there, and real light braking, maybe 30% or so by the time you reach that point. There's about the maybe closer to 40% really by that point in time. So you can see where the car is pointed. You really don't need to use too much of this curbing, and you can see I really tend to touch that more on the earlier part, and then kind of come off in that straighter braking zone there. You could actually probably go a little bit further left. I don't know. I found that this was pretty typical of my line here, and my main focus as I'm coming through the braking zone here is to now get turned in as close to this curbing as possible without using too much of it. So as the car is now starting to turn in already, trail braking into the corner a bit, the car's down into second gear through this corner, and getting close to about 70 mile per hour at the lowest point in speed. You want to carry speed through this corner without having to get on throttle too soon, because if you get on throttle too soon and at this point, the car's going to slide out on you a bit. And if you carry more speed than this, just the speed alone, even without throttle, could be enough with this kind of off-camber road here to send the car into a slide. And you'll find yourself off into the dirt here pretty quickly if you carry too much speed over this corner here. So there's still quite a lot of turning going on, about a 90-degree steering angle here, getting on throttle pretty lightly, and now finally reaching full throttle at this point. So real patient there on throttle. You see it takes quite a while to get back to full throttle there. So let's go ahead and play that through. All right, so setting up for turns 3 and 3A. So turn 3 being the first left-hander here, and then just up at the top of the hill, the right-hander. So 3 definitely leads into 3A, and you're setting up for 3A. This entire set of corners is really setting up for a good exit out of 3A, because if you don't hit the points well, then you're going to have a rough time around 3A, which is at the top of the hill. So the initial setup is to get the car right here to the right-hand side where the dirt is, and that's about where you're going to start to brake and then turn in just as you cross there. So you'll see the car getting right up close to the dirt there. I don't use any more road to the right than that. I'm already starting to turn in as I cross the crest of the hill there, and then there's going to be a quick light braking, maybe 30% brake, and turning in. And as I'm turning in here, what I'm looking to do is to use all of the road to the left without touching the curbing, really just getting as close to this as I can. And this is the one mistake that I mentioned in the lap where I used too much curbing. Luckily, it didn't slow me down too much, but you'll see how much it does unsettle the car. And that was only, I don't know, maybe half of the curbing right there, but it's pretty steep curbing. You don't want to use it too much. So it's much smoother through here not to use any of that. So, but getting close to that, and obviously that's what I'm trying to do, is I'm trying to get as close to that as I can so that I have a better line through 3A, which is another corner you've got to be really careful about taking too much speed through, where the car will come loose across the crest there at the top. So pretty light on throttle. You'll see maybe half, 40 to 50% throttle. And then now just maybe some quick light braking. And again, the apex you're looking for is on the right at the top of a hill, just barely coming into view. And you can use maybe half. It's better to maybe use maybe a little less than half of curbing here. You can see how it starts to get a little steeper. Unsettles the car quite a bit. It will delay on throttle and can really throw the car around a bit, leading into a slide. So be careful not to use any more curbing than this. That's about, I think, the limit on how much you can use there without the car getting thrown around quite a bit. So again, dragging brakes a bit here, trying not to carry too much speed. I think the lowest speed is around 90. Yeah, about 90 mile per hour in this particular lap and track temp. Of course, this is qualifying fuel. Bear in mind that once you have race fuel, things will vary quite a bit. You'll need to make adjustments there for how much speed you can carry and so forth. So getting on throttle, again, by reaching that apex, not quite full throttle until cars straighten back up, which is now on the left-hand side here, and using all of the curbing here to the left. So let's go ahead and watch this through this section of corners. All right, so coming down into turn 4. trying to use all of the track, keeping the car left, and giving yourself as much room for this corner as you can. About 40% to 50% braking starting toward the end of the curbing, not quite before you reach the end of it. So I think that's about my threshold braking already. About half, 50%, maybe a little bit more. And then waiting to turn in till just a bit closer here. Trail braking into the corner a little. Again, tapping brakes a bit and using none of the curbing to the right. It goes steep immediately. You don't want to touch that, and you'll notice that there is a bump in this corner that you will always hit, and it's not the curbing that you'll see the car kind of bounce over here. That's a bump in the road, but that's where your line is to get right up close to this curbing. And so you can see if we play this back at speed, how much of a bounce the car takes. So because of that, at that point in time, you really don't want to have too many inputs as far as brake and throttle go. You just kind of want to guide the car through, steering the car through. I'm very, very light on brakes, and the way that I take a lot of the corners here is that I'd rather start with a little extra speed and then kind of scrub that off while kind of trail braking into the corners, or just kind of dragging that brake pedal real lightly. And of course, waiting until the car has now settled after that bounce there to start to ease back into throttle. Still a lot of steering input going on, so you got to be real careful there. But the speed of the car is going to carry right out wide here. Now this is what I call flirting with this disaster, is that if you take just maybe a couple more inches of dirt here, the car will spin out on you really quickly. So avoid any of the dirt here to the left, and the amount that I take here is really right up on the edge of where you're about to lose traction. So be very careful with that. This is an area where you'll see a lot of spins happen just by setting off a tire off into that dirt there. But getting back to throttle here, again, you have to be a little bit patient, but I think if you get a little bit too eager on the throttle even before, or even as you kind of reach the curbing here, you can also put the car into a spin just by getting to full throttle a little too soon. So let's go ahead and watch this one back. Okay, so approaching turn 6, full throttle all the way down the right-hand side here, getting set up for the turn-in point and braking at the crest of the hill here, a quick 30% or so, and then turning in. Of course, shifting the weight of the car forward with that quick braking to help with turn-in, and keeping the car pretty tight to the left here and being patient on throttle until you know that you can commit to it and get back to full throttle. For me, the point to get on throttle is just past this point here, maybe just before reaching the curbing, and then getting back to full throttle by about the midpoint there. And of course, now carrying full throttle all the way through the rest of the corner here. So the amount of speed that you're carrying through here is going to run the car wide all the way to the exit curbing here on the right. And using a little bit of that, you can even touch the dirt here without an off track, without any problem. So you could actually run a little bit wider there if you need to. So when you're running through this corner, you'll know that you haven't carried enough speed. If you've gone full throttle and the car isn't running all the way out to this exit curbing, you'll know you can actually just carry more speed through the corner. So getting that throttle point right, and of course the amount of speed you have here at the mid corner point, which is was it around 90? Yeah, right around 90 mile per hour there. So this is about the slowest point of the corner here, right as the car is now starting to get back on throttle. So if you've carried the right amount of speed there, getting back to full throttle, you'll feel the car just naturally now running wide with that turning radius and using all of that exit curbing. All right, so braking point's pretty difficult to define here. I do a lot of the braking here just by I don't know, I guess the crest of the hill here and vision that you have. Although going back and kind of just analyzing and watching this, I found that I was actually starting to brake right at about this first sign, and threshold brake by the third sign, the middle sign. So the red sign is about where I hit threshold brake, about 75% braking at that point there. It's a pretty hard braking zone, and you really got to get the car slowed down quite a bit here, and you need a nice sharp turn in. Pretty quick 90-degree turning radius at this point. So you've got to rotate the car pretty quickly and get back to throttle as soon as you can. This is a real important corner because it now sets up your speed entering that that back straight down through the S's. And I found that this corner here, that if you didn't hit this quite right and get on throttle soon enough, that could very easily cost you a couple of tenths in this sector of the track. So the point of getting back on throttle really is right about here, about the mid corner point, and just very lightly starting to ease back onto it. And I probably got onto it a little too heavy at first. You'll see I have to have another quick lift here and then back to throttle. But you want that throttle point to be early, and for that to happen, you've got to get a lot of quick rotation done. So pretty heavy steering angle there at that point. So as long as you've slowed the car enough, and you can see how much braking is being done here. Real heavy braking initially, still carrying braking, pretty hard braking, and then letting off and maybe trail braking a bit just as the car is getting turned in. And when I play this back, you'll hear the car sliding just a bit. So really right up on the edge of traction there, but was able to still get a good throttle point. And right there at the mid corner point, starting to get back on throttle. So if you can get the car close to the curbing here on the exit of the corner, then you'll know that you can get back to full throttle soon after that. You can use all of the space here to the left to get back to throttle. So let's play this through. So you can see how getting back to throttle definitely coincides with steering inputs, and so you can see that as the steering opens up, the more that it opens up, the more throttle is being applied, to the point where by the time the car's straightened back up here, it's about now full throttle. Okay, so coming up onto the S's now. You don't really need to use much curbing, actually. You can get through as long as you're on the right line. You don't really need a lot of curbing to get through here. Now, if you're running with a little any hotter weather or with race fuel, you actually may want to use a little bit more curbing than I used here. Getting the car real close here to the left, full throttle. You're going to carry full throttle all the way up into fourth gear here. Again, real tight to the right here on the curbing, but not quite touching that. Now, you're never braking, at least through these next couple corners. You're really just lifting, and typically lifting just at the early, turn-in point. So you can see about a 40% or so lift there on throttle. Now getting back on full throttle here toward the end of the latter part of the curbing there, and then again just a slight lift at the initial turn-in point, down to about 30% throttle, and now back to full throttle all the way through here. So you can see in this particular run there wasn't any curbing really used, but got real nice and close to it. So if you're running the right line and managing the throttle well, then it's real smooth through there, and you don't really need to use any of the curbing. Now with race fuel and with maybe warmer weather, you can use a little bit more curbing than I've done here, and the car handles this curbing pretty well, especially right here on the right. I've gotten easily at least halfway up on this curbing before without too much trouble, and it doesn't unsettle the car too much. So you can use that, but the ideal line is really to have the car, you can see, pointed more to the right by the end of this curbing. And if you're using too much curbing there, that may throw off the direction that the car is pointed on your exit. And this is a point where you're likely to run wide and go off into the dirt if you don't have the right angle on the approach out of the corner there. So now I found that despite how much speed I was carrying through here, I still had plenty of space to use, and I don't find that it's necessarily quicker or better to be closer to the curbing here on the left and the dirt on the left. It usually happens when I've not run the optimal amount of speed or the optimal line. So it's not too difficult to hit that exit as long as the car is on the right driving line. So let's play this through speed one more time. So if we have flat out all the way through here, using all of the curbing on the left, you see I even get up into the dirt just a little bit. And the reason for that is that I'm actually going to go full throttle all the way through here. This is something I was able to do with 10 wing, and it does require good timing on the turn-in point, which is right at the end of the curving here. And it's a pretty quick turn in. So you can see how quick, just in slow motion, it's a real quick turn, quick sharp turn in, and aiming to reach the curbing to the right here. You can see I use just a little bit of that. That's about the most used there, about halfway up. And then you can carry full throttle all the way down to the end of the straight here. So let's go ahead and play that back. So you notice I didn't even use any of the exit curbing there. So you could probably run full throttle through here with even less wing, maybe 9 wing, but it's just about getting the timing just right. So if you hit that just right, you can definitely carry full throttle all the way through that corner. Takes a bit of practice on the timing there, but it's definitely possible. Braking point here is, I think I'm starting to get on the brakes just after I cross the painted lines here, but threshold brake is probably about the middle of this Toyota sign. The way I think about it is getting to threshold brake prior to reaching the cones here on the left. And in this particular lap, I hit these 2 cones, and I've hit them a fair amount of times and gone back to look to see. And what we found at Mid-Ohio was that there were some places you could get a cone kind of lodged up under your wing, and your car's going to understeer like crazy once you get a cone lodged up under the wing, and you're going to lose a lot of time if it stays there. And it can stay lodged there for the rest of the race, really, if you're that unlucky. But in qualifying, I wouldn't worry about it. I wouldn't worry about hitting those cones. I haven't seen a cone get lodged just in my practice recently, although I'm trying to remember back to the race last season, and if a cone from here could get lodged easily, and I'm sure it can, depending on where you hit them. In this particular instance, they're up on the front left of the car, and maybe that makes it, I don't know, a little less likely. If they're maybe closer to the middle, maybe they're more likely. But anyway, maybe I just got lucky with all of my runs through there. But I like to enter from a wider line here because it helps quite a bit. This is, I think, the most difficult corner on the track. It's a first gear exit for me anyway. I like to get a quicker exit using first gear, but that again makes it even more difficult. So if you're having trouble with first gear, just try exit from second gear. But getting the car around this corner, you want to use as much road as you can and get a nice, real quick, tight turning radius here. And I'm actually just looking at this this set of tires. I'm not worried about the line at all. You can run even closer to the tires than I ran here. The car can actually cross over, I believe, without an off track over the curbing here. But my goal here is to get the car rotated as quick as I can in the shortest amount of distance so that I can get back to throttle. You can see that it's kind of an increasing radius. You can see how much turning input is going on here at this point. And before I've even started to open up the steering wheel, I'm already just kind of gradually giving it some throttle already, because you can get away with about 50% throttle or so without putting the car into a slide here. So I think if your goal at the mid corner point is to just kind of start to get back on throttle lightly, and then kind of gradually unwinding the steering here. And because it's tight, you'll see that as the car comes around the corner, I can get back to full throttle sooner, because now I can kind of point to the wall and straighten the car out, pointed toward the wall here, and now reaching full throttle into the shift into second gear. So there's the full throttle point already in second gear. So let's play through this one a few times. It's pretty difficult. See if there's anything else I can note here as we look at it. And wrong camera view there. All right, so there's a lap of Sonoma. Hope you found this helpful. Talk to you later.